So what is the future of The Legend of Zelda going to look like? Because after The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, we really don't know where in the world this is taking place. There was 4 games that took place in this Hyrule, and each of them brought so much implementation to this one story. And now if you're going into the next Legend of Zelda game, whenever, wherever this may be, it's just like, okay, so is this going to be a linear format that's going to be a 2D Zelda game, or is it going to be 3D with just maybe something like Ocarina of Time, or is it going to be back to Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and have it all into one massive story? This story is at least 6 hours. You can watch every single cutscene and you can see, okay, so this. You have the Champions Ballad DLC. You had Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. That was a massive game for that. There was at least 2 hours and 50 minutes of story, which is really great. And then you go on to Age of Imprisonment, which is probably going to have something similar. So all of these games combined have a massive storytelling. Is it going to be something that's going to be a big story again? Because honestly, I hope that The Legend of Zelda has one big story once again, because the Legend of Zelda games honestly keep you sucked in with the story, because who here just was playing the game? Either Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, you're not very a fan of that gameplay, but then the story really like, okay, so I have to do this to know what happened here, and I have to keep going throughout this adventure to know what happened in the story. And it wasn't just tiny little story bites, it was some big story bites that we knew, okay, so this is what happened during Breath of the Wild. And it really led up to a great job to know, oh, okay, so this is what happened. And then you move over to Breath of the Wild, and then, okay, you wake up 100 years later, and now we're moving over to Age of Imprisonment. I hope that it's going to be pretty much what Age of Calamity gave you. It gave you that perfect gap in between those games. So now we gotta know, okay, so how did the imprisoning war take place? How is there random sky islands that weren't there in Breath of the Wild? Where did the depths come from? Now, the story in the game of Tears of the Kingdom does explain some of this and somewhat, but it kind of is a little vague with the explanation on what happened. Now we finally get to see the full depths into what happened during that time. So the next Legend of Zelda game is just like, okay, so I don't think it's going to be this massively detailed in a massive story. It's probably going to be a tiny little story that's going to connect into something bigger. If they wanted to, they could add DLC for something like that, or are they going to add all of this story, all this depth? And with the Legend of Zelda movie coming out soon, we may be going to see that just going to be the story bites for the game, the upcoming game, the next game, whatever the case may be. Or is it going to be all into the gameplay itself? Because story in The Legend of Zelda, just for me, is something very special. And honestly, if it is something going to be like The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker 2 mixed with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, hey, that would be really interesting, because I would love to know what happened in this Hyrule with The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker Link. Okay, what happened after Tears of the Kingdom would have been cool, but we don't ever really get to see a light Hyrule, a Hyrule surrounded in light. It barely happens, and on the odd time it does, it goes away shortly after the game. But I guess it's to move over the plot line. So the next Legend of Zelda game, is it going to be Lorule going to be coming back for this strong occasion, or is it going to be Hyrule surrounded in water, or is it going to be something new? Now that we're getting Mario Galaxy, could we be seeing The Legend of Zelda Galaxy, where there's a secret rift that collapses the entire world and makes everything drawn into space? Now, this probably wouldn't work too well for The Legend of Zelda, but hey, it's Nintendo. Who knows? They can draw the story on whatever way they wanted to do. Is there going to be horses or motorbike? Is it going to be set into the past or the future? Because The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or even Tears of the Kingdom is, I would say, set into the past, but then the Zonai devices are kind of strange when you look at it that way. So I feel like maybe the next Legend of Zelda game is going to be set in the future. Now, we're not going to be talking about futures like, hey, we're going to be living in Ahsoka, Japan, where there's going to be a whole bunch of high-rise buildings, a whole bunch of different things, sword that looks like lightsabers, and all that stuff. Probably not going to happen. But you really got to think to yourself, okay, then is it going to be the past Legend of Zelda with swords, shields, and things that came out of a 1950 TV show? So you really got to think to yourself, okay, so how is this going to be taking place? How is The Legend of Zelda going to change up in a way. I think it's going to be something truly different than what we had from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because we can all admit that the story in that game was honestly the best. It might not be your favorite Legend of Zelda game. Maybe you weren't a fan of your weapons breaking every 5 hits, but you have to admit that the story was definitely where it shined. And if you weren't a big fan of the story, my goodness, this was a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think. But overall, that's completely my opinion. So anyways, yep, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom is amazing story. The next game, it's really got a head scratcher. It really got to fill in the void on what happened, because of course, the Legend of Zelda community is probably going to be split from now forward, because hey, maybe you're a big fan of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the big story, the nice implementation, being able to explore to your heart's content. Or maybe you're not a big fan and you like something more like Ocarina of Time, where you're stuck in a two-way dimension, sort of weird world that, yeah, overall, it's an interesting thing, because I wasn't actually the biggest fan of Ocarina of Time. Just gotta say that. Or is it going to be a 2D Zelda game like The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds, where that truly is the two-way dimension sort of. You go into the painting and you wallow across the wall, and you go into the dark world and you mix up all of these things. Overall, it's a very, very cool, I would say. The Legend of Zelda is going to be interesting now forward. I think that this truly is a series of implementations, adding things. Every single Legend of Zelda game is different in some way. If you take a look at the 3D Zelda games, these ones definitely where the difference shines. Like The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Well, you're on a sailboat and you're going from island to island, and you're getting Triforces after Hyrule was sunken to protect it. Okay, well then there was other Legend of Zeldas like Twilight Princess, where you had to go into dark realms, you were a wolf, and also you had weird things that you had to save to lighten things up. Okay, if that wasn't clear enough, alright, so you had The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Skyward Sword. Now, Breath of the Wild, you can go anywhere you want. In Skyward Sword, you can fly, which is where Tears of the Kingdom's island probably came from somewhere. And they're all connected in one timeline, so we think. But if you look at the links, these are definitely not the same links. They're definitely not the same Zeldas. So overall, the timeline is a whole wishy-washy sort of mess. But I think it definitely is a very, very unique timeline that has a lot of different things to uphold, and the future of The Legend of Zelda definitely could put some of those dominoes into place, and maybe it's going to be the biggest story once again. You can explore your heart's content, it's your journey, and voila, it's completely up to you. Or is it going to be more like a 3D dimension sort of game that you're just going from one place to the next place? Even if it is 3D, it's not meant to be open world. Overall, I don't know, it's very, very interesting. Anyways, the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda is next year, so we're going to have to see what's going on with this. We're probably not going to be seeing the next Legend of Zelda game, maybe a remaster or remake, Legend of Zelda Link Between Worlds, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, or all of those things. It's going to be a very, very interesting time, and I'm so excited for the future of The Legend of Zelda. Anyways, what do you think about all of this stuff? Do you think that it's going to be something like this? Or do you think it's going to be something like linear or nothing at all? Or do you think this is completely baloney all over the place? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hope that you enjoyed. And if you liked this video, consider to hit the like button, maybe the hype button. That apparently happens after you like. I don't know. It's something very interesting. Anyways, that being said, see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day.